What if I told you that there are things so expensive that even the richest person on Earth couldn't afford them? We're not talking about luxury cars, billion-dollar mansions, or even private islands. We're talking about objects, mega projects, and discoveries so valuable that their price reaches into the trillions of dollars. Some were created by humans. Some were formed by nature over billions of years. And one of them is so unimaginably expensive that putting a price tag on it almost doesn't make sense. So today, we're going on a journey through the world's most expensive things, from priceless works of art to the largest engineering projects ever built, to scientific creations that have changed the future of humanity. And by the end of this video, you'll discover what is arguably the most expensive thing humanity has ever created. It all started with you, humans. At first glance, the human body doesn't look very expensive. But what if you had to build one from scratch? Scientists estimate that if you purchased every chemical inside the human body individually, at laboratory-grade purity, the total cost could exceed $150,000. Now, here's the surprising part. A pig is made from many of the same basic elements: carbon, oxygen, hydrogen, calcium, and more. Yet, assembling those raw materials would cost only around $300. So why is there such a massive difference? Because the value of a human isn't defined by chemistry. Governments use a method called the value of a statistical life, which estimates the economic benefit of protecting one person's life. In some countries, that figure is estimated at around $14.2 million. But even that is considered a conservative estimate. If someone harvests you, then every transplantable organ and tissue in the human body could somehow be assigned a value. The total could reach as high as $45 million. Of course, this isn't a legal market price. It's only a speculative estimate. But even with that staggering number, humans are still nowhere near the next item on our list. Back in 1503, a wealthy merchant wanted a portrait of his wife. He found an incredibly talented painter and asked him, "Can you please paint me my wife?" The painter basically replied, "Sure. Give me a little time." 2 weeks, well, that little time turned into 16 years. By the time the painting was finally left behind, the painter himself was gone. Only then do we learn his name: Leonardo da Vinci. After his death, the painting was purchased by the King of France. Over the years, it hung inside royal palaces and even spent time in the private rooms of some of the most powerful peoples. Eventually, it was moved to the Louvre Museum. And for a while, almost nobody paid much attention to it. Then in 1911, someone stole it. And ironically, that theft made the painting more famous than ever. Newspapers around the world covered the story, crowds rushed to the museum, and when it was finally recovered, it had become a global icon. Today, experts estimate that if this 30-inch plank of wood with colored oil were ever sold, it could be worth around $1 billion. But believe it or not, that's still nowhere near the nature's most expensive discovered completely by accident. Back in 1905, Sir Thomas Major Cullinan was overseeing mining operations in South Africa. That's when workers uncovered what would become the largest gem-quality diamond ever discovered. It was almost completely colorless, had zero visible imperfections, and is still considered one of the most chemically perfect stones ever produced by planet. But here's the interesting part. It wasn't a geologist or a scientist who first spotted it, it was the mines manager. He was simply out for a routine walk around the mine when he noticed something unusual sticking out of the rock. And that was the biggest diamond ever found. The massive stone was carefully cut from the rock, and years later it was shifted to more white peoples. Today, experts estimate that if the original Cullinan diamond still existed as a single stone, it could be worth around $2 billion. And believe it or not, that's still far from the most expensive thing on this list. Land. Back in 1803, France controlled an enormous portion of today called North America, a territory that stretched across what is now the central United States. America's just wanted a part of land. It only wanted to buy the small port of New Orleans and was prepared to pay up to $10 million for it. But then Napoleon Bonaparte said, "No. Do you think I will sell it just for $10 million instead? Buy Louisiana Territory for $15 million. I don't know why he does that, But the United States accepted immediately. With a single signature, the country nearly doubled in size, paying only about 4 cents per acre, a deal still considered one of the greatest land purchases in history. But it wasn't the most expensive land ever sold. That title belongs to a tiny plot in Hong Kong. In 2017, a former multi-story car park site at 2 Murray Road sold for around $3 billion. Why would such a small piece of land cost more than an entire American territory bought in 1803? Because it's located in the heart of one of the world's busiest financial districts, where land is extremely scarce, demand is enormous, and every square meter can generate massive commercial value. Sometimes location is worth far more than size. And that's exactly why this tiny plot became one of the most expensive pieces of land ever sold. Wow, that's clever. But buying the land is just the beginning. What will happen when money is used to build the ultimate home on it? In 2019, a French billionaire paid nearly $240 million for a luxury apartment in New York City. Sounds like the perfect dream home. Except he barely lives there. In fact, many of the world's most expensive apartments stay empty for most of the year because billionaires treat them as investments, not homes. But one billionaire wanted something completely different. Instead of buying the world's most expensive home, he built his own. The result was Antilia, the world's most expensive private residence. Construction cost an estimated $4.6 billion. Inside are 168 parking spaces, 3 helipads, a snow room, multiple swimming pools, private theaters, and hundreds of luxury rooms. But there's another story behind this building. It stands on land where an orphanage once existed. And if you're wondering what happened to an orphanage, today around 600 people work there every day just to keep the house running. But even this isn't the world's most valuable residence. That title belongs to Buckingham Palace. Believe it or not, it didn't begin as a palace. Back in 1703, it was built as Buckingham House, a large townhouse for the Duke of Buckingham. A few decades later, King George III purchased it for Queen Charlotte, turning it into a royal residence. Over the next 2 centuries, it was expanded again, and again, and again. Eventually, the old house disappeared beneath a much larger building. Today, it has grown into Buckingham Palace, with an incredible 775 rooms. Experts now estimate its value at around £4.9 billion, making it one of the most valuable residences on the planet. But as unbelievable as that sounds, it's still just a home. Because the next chapter isn't about houses anymore, it's about mega projects so massive that entire civilizations spent decades, sometimes centuries, building them. Humanity has spent trillions of dollars building projects that changed the world. One of the greatest examples is the U.S. interstate highway system. Construction began in 1956, and over the decades, building and expanding the network has cost an estimated $600 billion. But many economists believe it was worth every penny. In fact, studies have estimated that every dollar invested returned around $6 to the U.S. economy by making travel, trade, and transportation dramatically faster. It solved a clear problem with a clear plan and delivered clear results. But not every mega project is built to solve today's problems. Some are built to create tomorrow's cities. In 2021, Saudi Arabia announced The Line, a 105-mile linear city surrounded by mirrored walls. Instead of spreading outward, the city is designed to stretch in a perfectly straight line across the desert. Early estimates suggested a much lower cost, but newer projections indicate the full project could eventually cost close to $9 trillion if completed over the coming decades. It could become the most expensive construction project in human history. But even that is still on Earth. Our next project is floating far above it, around 420 kilometers above our planet, roughly 45 times higher than Mount Everest, orbits the International Space Station, the most expensive single objects built by humans. It took more than a decade to assemble, with modules built by experts from multiple countries, each engineered to fit together with extraordinary precision. Out there, a single mistake can become deadly in seconds. With an estimated cost of over $150 billion, the ISS isn't just one of the most expensive projects ever built, it's one of humanity's greatest engineering masterpieces. But even our greatest masterpiece can't compete with the price of humanity's next chapter: war. Throughout history, humans have built incredible things, but we've also spent unimaginable amounts destroying them. World War I, fought between 1914 and 1918, is estimated to have cost the world around $200 to $300 billion in today's money. At the time, it was the most expensive conflict in human history. But just 2 decades later, the world went to war again. This time, on a scale never seen before. World War II, fought from 1939 to 1945, involved more than 100 million people across dozens of countries. Factories stopped making everyday products and started producing tanks, aircraft, ships, and weapons around the clock. When adjusted for today's value, economists estimate the total cost of World War II at over $25 trillion, without calculating the cost of distraction. That's enough money to build countless mega projects, or transform entire nations. It's pretty expansive, right? All things in this video value for a reason, but the most expansive thing is unusual. Everything around you is made of tiny particles. What most people don't realize is that almost every one of those particles has an opposite version. They look almost identical, but they carry the opposite electric charge. And when one meets the other, they don't simply collide. They vanish, releasing an enormous burst of energy. In fact, just 1 gram of this mysterious particle could release more energy than 3 Hiroshima bombs. So why don't we just make more of it? Well, nature does make it. Believe it or not, even a banana produces tiny antimatter particles, but they're so incredibly small and disappear so quickly that even if every human who had ever lived owned a banana, you'd still have to wait far longer than the age of the universe to collect a single gram. So scientists had to find another way. Today, they create it by smashing particles together at almost the speed of light inside massive particle accelerators. They accelerate tiny particles to almost the speed of light, then fire them into a solid metal target. The impact creates a shower of new particles flying in every direction. Hidden among that debris are a few incredibly rare opposite particles. Powerful magnetic fields separate them from everything else, and they are trapped inside an ultra-high vacuum chamber. Even after decades of research, humanity has produced only an unimaginably tiny amount. That's why NASA estimates that producing just 1 gram would cost around $62.5 trillion. That's why the most expensive substance humanity has ever created is antimatter.